Now, this hour, we start in the Middle East, where after Israel Defense Minister Israel Katz approved a plan to seize Gaza City and authorize the call-up of 60,000 reservists, Hamas's armed wing, the Qassam Brigades, has claimed responsibility for a raid on a newly established Israeli military position southeast of Khan Yunis in southern Gaza. In a statement, the group said its fighters engaged Israeli troops at close range using light weapons and grenades and claimed a sniper fatally wounded one of the commanders of a Merkava 4 tank. It also said that a suicide bomber detonated explosives among Israeli forces as reinforcements arrived. According to the Qassam Brigades, the attack involved mortar fire, anti-tank shells and explosives and lasted several hours before its fighters withdrew. According to reports, the group did not specify how many Israeli soldiers were killed or wounded. We're now joined by Yossi Kapawasa. He is an Israeli intelligence and security expert, and he joins us live from Tel Aviv. Thank you very much, Yossi, for joining us. If you can, we currently constantly get influxes of information of the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Hamas's military capabilities is also currently yet left unspoken about. Can you give us a synopsis of how capable Hamas currently is, given after this attack has just happened?
Good morning. Hamas is still capable of carrying out such attacks, and the report that Hamas issued has a grain of truth. They did carry out the attack. What happened was that they lost something like 10 of their terrorists, and there was one Israeli soldier that was severely injured as well. And they have the capability, they launch attacks almost on a daily basis, and the fact that they are able to do so is just because we allow the humanitarian aid to go in, and they confiscate it and steal it and then sell it in very high prices to the population, and that enables them to get the money to buy weapons and to produce weapons. And that's what we to recruit more terrorists to the ranks. And that's the reality we're living in. That's the reality we are trying to change, with the attempt to take over the Gaza City and remove Hamas from power in Gaza.
Yossi, there has been widespread criticism for this new plan to overtake Gaza City, both internationally and domestically. We've obviously seen protests across Israel, thousands and thousands of people walking the streets in protest of this, obviously for the safety of the hostages, but also the safety of the IDF going into Gaza City, a much more built-up area where Hamas can hide. Is Netanyahu making the right decision in launching this new offensive?
Well, I think the most important thing that Netanyahu does is keep all the options open. He still didn't close the door for a partial deal. Now we see that Hamas has come back with a more flexible position on the issue of a partial deal. And the Israeli response to that has not been given yet. And I guess it's going to be negative, or yes, but because the Hamas didn't go far enough in order to meet us on the issue of partial deal. He definitely is ready to have a full deal that would release all the hostages and see readiness on behalf of Hamas to disarm themselves and hand the control of Gaza to somebody else. And if those two options are not going to materialize, we are moving forward in the third option of taking over Gaza City by force and removing Hamas from power by force. So all the options are still on the table. We are making progress on all of them. We are discussing the partial deal, and Israeli responses expected by the end of the week. And we are preparing also to the other two options. The best option from an Israeli point of view is if the pressure, the military pressure, and the readiness to take steps in order to remove Hamas from power by force is going to convince Hamas to go for a comprehensive deal, full deal that would see the release of all the hostages and Hamas leaving power and delivering it to somebody else. That would be the best, and this would avoid the need to go to a military operation. But if this is not going to work and the partial deal is not going to be satisfactory, we have to be prepared also to the third option, and that's why we call the reservists. And that's why the more we seem to be, in the eyes of Hamas, serious about carrying out the third option, the military operation, the better the chances are that we shall end up with either option A or option B.
Yossi, finally to the diplomatic front. We've seen Benjamin Netanyahu today come out and seriously condemn Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese in Australia's plan to recognise a Palestinian state. We've just had a look at the Reuters news agency, and it says that even most Americans believe that countries should recognise a Palestinian state. This poll comes from Reuters Ipsos, which says 58% of Americans believe every country in the United Nations should recognise Palestine as a nation. Benjamin Netanyahu has strong words for those that do so. Is Israel at risk currently of losing all its Western friends, which it values so dearly, but not just right now, but also in the future?
Well, those governments of the Western countries that recognize or intend to recognize the Palestinian state, they were in favor of doing that for a long time. These were Albanese in Australia, for example, and Macron were in favor of this idea for a very long time, even before the war. But doing it now is just giving a prize, a reward to terrorism, a reward to Hamas. Hamas says it clearly. It says this is an outcome of the 7th of October attack. It's beyond my understanding what leads them to do this move just now. The fact that they want to see a Palestinian state, which is a mistake by itself, because they don't put any conditions for that, any real conditions. A Palestinian state can be established only if the Palestinians change the narrative and are ready to accept Israel as a Jewish state. If they're not ready to do that, if they consider a Palestinian state as a launching pad for carrying out terror attacks against Israel and attacking Israel so that Israel will cease to exist, what is the logic behind recognizing such a state? The Palestinians had a kind of a state in Gaza. All they did was using it in order to launch attacks against Israel, as we saw eventually on the 7th of October. This lacks any logic, and that's why most Israelis, not 58%, but 90% of Israelis are totally frustrated with this position. It's not that we're losing our friends, they are still our friends, but they become more and more problematic friends. And as we say, with friends like this, who needs enemies?
Yossi, thank you very much. Pleasure to have you on, and thank you.